President Putin has authorized a punishing retaliatory strike against American military forces for their complicity in the murder of 4 Russian servicemen in Syria, and virtually unknown to the American people. The U.S. military presence in Syria is an illegal act and violation of international law, as the Syrian government has not invited the United States into its country, nor are they at war or pose a risk to each other, thus creating a situation where the United States can now be labeled as a terrorist state under its own NATO rules that describe terrorism as the unlawful use or threatened use of force or violence against individuals or property in an attempt to coerce or intimidate governments or societies to achieve political, religious or ideological objectives. Equally not known to the American people is that the conflict in Syria was initiated by the Obama-Clinton regime for the purpose of eradicating Christianity from the entire Middle East, whom Syrian President Assad was the last protector of, as millions of Christian refugees flooding into his country fleeing from the barbaric Islamic terrorist group named ISIS that was created by President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton in 2011 to launch the mother of all proxy wars until, that is, on the 30th of September 2015. When President Putin and the Russian Orthodox Church declared this conflict to be a holy war for the protection of all Christianity, and Russian military forces took up arms in attempting to end this war on Christianity started by the Obama-Clinton regime, President Trump cut off funding to the American-funded terrorists in Syria, with his further declaring that he planned on removing U.S. military forces from Syria too. But that Foreign Minister Lavrov countered by saying the U.S. was lying, as it had no intention whatsoever of leaving Syria, most particularly due to the American shadow government deep state having boxed Trump in, thus limiting his ability to end this war. Left unspoken about what the Americans' true goal in Syria really is, was nothing less than their capture of Syria's entire oil region, and that by either war or dialogue, the Syrian government fully intends to take back control of. During the late evening hours of the 7th of February 2018, the Syrian government made a war move to take back control of part of their nation's oil wealth from the Americans, and that saw a contingent of up to 500 Syrian and Russian mercenaries attempt to retake the vital Conoco oil facility in the Deir el-Zowar province, with U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mad Dog Mattis then describing the U.S. response as being, after the Russian high command in Syria assured us it was not their people. I then directed Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Joseph F. Dunford Jr. to annihilate them. The Western account of the annihilation battle that then ensued between these Syrian and Russian mercenaries and U.S. military forces describes how American electronic surveillance measures allowed U.S. warplanes to arrive in waves, including Reaper drones, F-22 stealth fighter jets, F-15E strike fighters, B-52 bombers, AC-130 gunships and AH-64 Apache helicopters, that, for the next 3 hours, launched scores of strikes that actually did annihilate these mercenaries. What may have been perplexing to Secretary Mattis about this attack, however, to the mod it provided a wealth of intelligence on how the Americans use their electronic surveillance assets to coordinate and direct their forces in battle, with all of this newly found information being then programmed into the highly feared Krasukma 4 broadband multifunctional jamming station, which is a Russian-made mobile electronic warfare system intended to neutralize low Earth orbit, LEO, spy satellites, ground-based radars and airborne radars, AWACS, at ranges between 150 to 300 kilometers. Within days of the 7th of February 2018 annihilation battle between the U.S. and the Syrian and Russian mercenaries, this report further details, the mod began deploying reconfigured Krasukma 4 broadband multifunctional jamming stations into Syria under the protection of Russia's most advanced Su-57 stealth fighters, with General Tony Thomas, head of U.S. Special Operations Command, solemnly noting their activation by his stating, "Right now in Syria, we're in the most aggressive electronic warfare environment on the planet from our adversaries. They're testing us every day." Among the electronic warfare operations the Krasukma 4 broadband multifunctional jamming stations in Syria have been involved in, was detecting, in early April 2018, American helicopters secretly evacuating Islamic terrorist leaders from Syria to Iraq before they could be captured or killed by Russian-Syrian forces, one of which was crashed a week later on the Syrian-Iraqi border, a week later killing all 7 aboard, after which the Americans never did this again. This past Monday, the 21st of May, The Krezlkma 4 broadband multifunctional jamming station protecting the military air base in Syria detected and directed fire upon an American drone, causing its destruction, and that the U.S. responded to by comically ordering the Syrian government to quit advancing on the Islamic terrorists infecting their country. Most dangerously, though, and just hours ago, in a further retaliation against one of their drones being destroyed, the Americans directed their Islamic terrorists to attack Russian and Syrian forces in the Deir ez-Zor governorate, and though up to 43 of these US-led terrorists, and their vehicles, were destroyed, but that, also, caused the outright murder of 4 Russian soldiers and the grave wounding of another 5, into which the Americans can fully expect an equal for equal counter-strike against, and much sooner than they expect.